This is the Fantasy Roadshow.
Hey, welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Roadshow. This episode is brought to you by Rule 1 Proteins. If you're looking to get back in the gym or just looking to re-up your supplement game, go check out Rule 1. They got the best protein powder, the best supplements, the best vitamins. You name it, they got it. Go check them out at www.rule1proteins.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You guys know the drill. My name is Truck. I'm inside of a truck, and I'm joined, as always, by the insatiable Mr. Anti-Consistency, Mr. Anti-Consensus, Kulz Sports. And I am also joined by the Kansas Cowboy himself, Shane O'Mac. And today we have a phenomenal guest for you guys. We have the biggest Jay Cutler apologist. We have a Colorado Vikings expert, one of the main faces and main voices of the fantasy football guys and the fantasy football space in general, Dave Kluge. Dave, how you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, guys. Always fun getting to meet some new people, see some new faces, hear some new takes. I'm excited for today.
Awesome, Dave. That was our just so you know what just happened. We're trying to make the intro a little bit more electric, and we're trying things. We're throwing shit at the wall right now. So
I appreciate that. I had Matthew Berry on my show a couple of years ago, and I introduced him, and he bit my head off for not introducing him as New York Times best-selling author. Like, I earned that right, and I expect to introduce that. I hate like everything, like the host of this, the host of that, award-winning this, yada yada yada, and I got hit for forgetting about the New York Times best-selling author part.
I've met him before, and that doesn't surprise me one bit. I met him at a Super Bowl party in Houston, and he was double fisting like vodka, water, lemons, and it was probably not his best moment, but I could definitely see that side of him from him being borderline blacked out at a Super Bowl party.
Yeah, he was busting my balls. He's a good guy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for coming on. I'm very much been looking forward to this. I mean, we've had a little bit of Twitter back and forth, and I've always enjoyed it. I mean, I would say you're definitely one of the people in the fantasy football space, but Twitter in general, that makes it more fun. There's a lot of bullshit that you see on there, but you're always keeping things light and do a good job of showing your personality and your likability on Twitter. So I'm very looking forward to this. I know all of us are. And yeah, man, we're going to talk Bears. I'd say this is one of the only times since I've been alive and growing up in Chicago where it's enjoyable to talk about the Bears with other people, so that'll be exciting. But
again, we dupe ourselves into this like every 3 off seasons. Let's not pretend this is the only time in your life. Like last year we were excited, like 3 years ago we were excited. It happens like every 2 or 3 off seasons.
Yeah,
off season. That's like the peak time to be a Bears fan.
This is different though. You got to admit that, right? Like
yeah.
At least it feels
coming
different.
Off the Super Bowl. Yeah. So was Matt Nagy coming off Coach of the Year, and Mitch Trubisky with the Pro Bowl experience. I will say, I mean, they've built a phenomenal supporting cast. Caleb Williams. It's hard not to get excited, but I don't know, man. As a lifelong Bears fan, I'm always a glass half empty kind of guy.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about your Bears fandom, your background a little bit, where you're from. And yeah, that Bears fandom and passion, where that came from. And I guess just start there.
Yeah, I grew up in the southwest suburbs, so I've been a Bears fan my whole life. Like, hardcore football family. We had season tickets growing up, so I've been going to games since I was just a little kid. And I moved to Colorado about 6 years ago, kept my fandom. Funny enough, we went to a game at Mile High Stadium a few years back. It was a preseason game, and Bears fans outnumbered Broncos fans like 10-1. There's so many Chicagoans out here in Colorado nowadays. Bears fans travel, but yeah, I've been a Bears fan my whole life. I was joking earlier. I think that there is a lot of reason for optimism this offseason. Really exciting things are happening right now. But you guys, can I safely assume you're all Bears fans?
Except one.
So Truck and I are
Not-
both from Lombard,
right.
Illinois. So I don't know if that's considered Southwest, but Western suburbs. And yeah, we grew up together. Shane O'Mac, you see the Cowboys helmet behind him. He's from Wichita, Kansas.
Gotcha. And I got the Lamar jersey behind me, so a lot of people confused. I gotta try to have more than just Bears stuff when I'm talking about other teams. But yeah, definitely Bears fan at heart. You guys are from Lombard. You probably know where Downers Grove area. That's where I'm from. But I spent 10 years living in the city before even moving out here to Colorado. And I don't know, man. Like you know how it is in Chicago. Like you can't do anything in the fall and winter. It's cold, it's miserable, it's gray. So you just kind of like bunker down with your buddies and drink beer and watch football all winter. That's kind of how you get through until spring comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to Montini Catholic, which is, I don't know if that's technically Downers Grove, but
yeah, we'll have to talk off air. I know so many kids that went to Montini. Like my friends went there.
And I assume we're in the relatively same age range. So we'll talk off air. I'm sure we have a ton of mutual friends. So that'll be fun. Yeah, so there's Bears. Let's talk about, you're a big name in the fantasy space. You're doing awesome things, football guys, and just, as I talked about your Twitter presence earlier, but give us a little background on how you got into the space and just how it's evolved to where you're at today.
A lot of people like come in with like a hard plan, like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z and try to make it in the fantasy space. That was never really my prerogative. I was just having fun on Reddit. I was writing articles completely anonymously on Reddit and sharing them there. And then one day somebody reached out to me from Fantasy Pros and they said, hey, would you be interested in writing some stuff for us? And, like my eyes lit up. I thought that I was going to be like the next big thing in the fantasy space. Realistically, they had me doing game recaps for 50 cents a pop. So I was like grinding my knuckles to the bone, writing about Sacramento Kings game recaps at like 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night and getting paid pennies for it. But it was a fun way to get exposure, kind of get the reps in, kind of learn what people are looking for in writing. So did that for a couple of years, 2018, 2019. And then when 2020 rolled around, I, like everybody else, was kind of cooped up, couldn't leave the house, had a lot of free time on my hands. And somebody was like, hey, you should get on Twitter, start sharing some of your takes there. And at this point, I'd graduated from NBA writing to MLB writing, and I had just started dipping my toes in doing NFL content for Fantasy Pros. So I got on Twitter, started sharing some takes there. I think the big thing that kind of set me apart is I just didn't take myself too seriously. Everybody was very cut and dry. These are the facts. You got to fall in line with the consensus. And I was just having fun, and I was just sharing memes and cracking jokes and pushing against the grain and making fun of a lot of bigger names in the industry. And for whatever reason, it resonated with a lot of people really quickly. So me and a few other guys, we started a website that off season, right before the 2020 season kicked off, Fantasy Intervention, and we kind of joke around. We compiled like the COVID all-stars. It was me and Cooter Doodle and Jeff Bell and Steffi Smalls and Troy King, and just this group of people that all started kind of getting their content on Twitter all around the same time. After that season, we all kind of went our own separate ways with different companies. I ended up landing over at Football Guys, and that was just the opportunity of a lifetime, getting to work with Joe Bryant. He kind of gave me the platform there. I was able to take my show from being an independent show, put it on the Football Guys channel, where I was really able to expand my reach, and it's been a fun few years. But yeah, I think the biggest advice I have is just like, don't take it too seriously. There's a lot of people out there that are giving, analytical data and, trying so like scared to step out of their lane and do something that could be wrong or anything like that. Just be yourself, share your takes, and that just being genuine gets rewarded, in my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate you say that. So previously to getting into fantasy football space, like I hadn't been on social media, to be honest. Truck was on. He's done some like fantasy footballers. He consumed a lot of that. I personally wasn't consuming or really on social, but getting into the space, that was kind of our mission statement, was like, let's just be lighthearted fantasy football. Like, at the end of the day, I know he said like I'm against consensus. He always gives me jabs about that, because my whole thought process is like, nobody knows what is going to happen. Like, at the end, like, so take strong opinions, believe in them, and play that way. I mean, like Jamar Chase was my wide receiver 1 last year. I think CeeDee Lamb was wide receiver 2 and Jefferson was 3. And I was just like, it's not a sure thing that Jefferson's going to be wide receiver 1. You know what I mean? Like, you never know, injuries, like there's a million things that can happen. So that's kind of where we've hung our hat. And I noticed that was the approach that you took. And once I was in the space and kind of saw other people operating that way, that's, another reason why really excited to have you on. So
yeah, and I think it's really important to have kind of an analytical background and know what you're looking at and know how to decipher numbers. But a lot of times you just got to go with your gut. And that was a big thing in 2021. Going into the 2021 season, it was my first year being full-time in the industry. And a lot of people, you get a target on your back when you're full-time in the industry because a lot of people are gunning for that position. Right. And during that entire offseason, the biggest flag that I planted was that Deebo Samuel was a good wide receiver. And I had all these nerds barking at me saying, oh, well, if you look at his ADOT and if you look at his EPA per play, blah, 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 blah. Just flip out a 49ers game. Like, if you watch this guy play, and sure enough, Deebo Samuel was getting drafted in the 8th, 9th round that year and finishes the overall wide receiver too. And that was a stance that I took, and I was getting berated for all offseason. And I didn't have an analytical backing to tell me that Deebo Samuel was going to be good. I just watched the guy play for 3 years, and I said, if this guy gets an opportunity and if he stays healthy, he's going to be good. And that year he happened to stay healthy and was very good. So all the numbers in the world sometimes can lead you astray. Sometimes it's better to just go with what your eyes are telling you.
Yeah, it's a game of analytics and statistics. So of course there's going to be an aspect of that.
Right.
But think about the people consuming it, right? It's not the true professional DFS players. They're going to be more analytical, and they're going to use their formulas and their spreadsheets they're creating. But like, at the end of the day, the people consuming it just want to know information and consume it in the most entertaining way possible, right?
And like you said, with DFS, these people are max entering all these contests. Same thing, like if I'm playing best ball, I'm very, I want to make sure I'm diversifying players and exposure and all that. And I'm taking more of a numbers-based approach to there because I'm drafting 500-plus teams. But if you're making content for a guy who's in one fantasy football league and he just wants to beat his buddies and have fun, like when I go home for my home league draft to Chicago, we are going into year 14 now. Same guys, we get together every single year for the draft. That's when I throw all of my studying and data and whatever out the window, and I just purely draft off of vibes, and I get my guy, and those teams always end up crushing. And if you're playing 500+ leagues, or if you're managing 20 or 30 dynasty rosters, you have to be a little bit more careful. But if you're just drafting one team, just go out and get your guys and have fun, because at the end of the day, that's what fantasy football is about.
Yeah, that's where the opportunity to me in this space that we're trying to operate in, right, is like, at the end of the day, the analytics, the personalities those guys typically carry is the numbers are the Bible, right? So like, they don't want to hear from us anyways. We're trying to crack into the space of your casual fan who just wants to know who to target in the first 3 rounds, right? I think this was an important discussion we have. It's not why we had you on here, but I do want to get into Bears. Shane, I believe you had a couple more background questions.
So so you had mentioned football guys, Dave, and I just want to kind of ask your opinion. So there's just obviously so much competition out there as far as fantasy sites. Every year there's more and more. What's made them successful over the years?
The culture, in my opinion. I mean, it's such a broad, ambiguous term, and it's really tough to kind of say what culture is, but it starts at the top. And Joe Bryant started this company back in the 1990s as a magazine business, one of the first websites out there. And he is just, I read his newsletter for years, and I saw his presence on Twitter. I was like, there's no way this guy's this nice in real life. Like, it's just not possible. Nobody is this kind and this friendly and this genuine. I've worked hand in hand with Joe, having, multiple calls a week with him for the last 3 years now. I've met him in person countless times. He really is that good. And, he just puts good energy out in the world, and it comes back to him. But I think what makes football guys specifically, aside from the culture, successful is that we have over 90 staffers. We have a very, very big staff and a lot of different websites out there. really try to say this is what we're doing. We're taking a film-based approach. We're taking a data-based approach. We're taking a dynasty approach. We're taking a DFS approach, whatever it may be. We do it all. So you can sign up at Football Guys, and whether you want film or numbers or narrative or insider information, whether you play dynasty, best ball, redraft, or whatever, we have somebody on staff that's going to do that for you. And I think that's what makes Football Guys really unique. You know, if you want a lighthearted show with a little bit of humor and dumb reoccurring bits and whatnot, check out the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show with Alfredo Brown and I. If you want two guys that are going to get deep into the weeds talking about the philosophy of football and things like that, Sigmund Bloom and Cecil Lammy have the Audible. If you want a hardcore film-based approach, you can check out Matt Waldman, who does the 1,800-page scouting report on every single player coming in every single year. We've got Adam Harstad, who genuinely does not watch football. Everything for him is a numbers game, and he is great at interpreting numbers and playing it that way. So we just kind of have, regardless of what you're looking for, we're going to have somebody on staff that can satiate that appetite for you.
Yeah. One of the things, Dave, I appreciate from your content is showing a little bit of the personal side of you that you have out there on Twitter. And, you know, one of the things that you haven't been afraid to talk about is the importance of mental health. And, you know, that's something that's true to me, you know, that we've had in my family go throughout. So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on how that came about to share that out there in the Twitter public space and kind of what that means to you.
Yeah, it's something that I'm very conflicted about because I do talk about it at times, but it's something that gets used against me a lot. And like, you'd be surprised how you share a little bit of vulnerability about yourself, and then you have a take on football that somebody disagrees with, and then they rub your face in it. So it's something that I'm conflicted about as my brand grows. You know, I used to do the mental health podcast. We would do a 12-hour podathon every single year during the month of November. And that was great. And I thought that it was really important for people to share their stories. I stopped doing it last year because of so much negative feedback, and it makes me feel, I keep using the word conflicted. I don't know what else to say. Like, I want to be that voice that lets people know that mental health struggles are common and that a lot of people deal with them. And I do share parts about that at times, but you know, the people in my DMs egging me on to kill myself because they disagree with the take or telling me to get back on my medicine or that I missed a dose or something like that. As much as I want to say it doesn't bother me, it does. So I've kind of reeled back a little bit on sharing that. It's something that I still believe is important, and I'm really proud of other people that are willing to share those opportunities, or not those opportunities, those stories. But it's something over the last couple of years that I have started to retract from a little bit. You know, I was very, very vulnerable early on in my kind of Twitter career, I guess you can say. And over the last year or so, I've tried to keep it a little bit more lighthearted because a lot of the vulnerability does get, you know, blown back at you.
Yeah, that's crazy because it's just, you know, it's with anyone out there. If you see somebody that, you know, let's just take Twitter that you follow and has that going on, to me, it's just anybody that can bring light to things like that is just a positive. So it's just crazy that you'd be getting that type of feedback.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think I might try to, you know, because you mentioned that, it's something that I hadn't really thought about too much. But, you know, maybe I'll start leaning into that a little bit more and just get a little heavier with the mute button.
Yeah. I'm so here. This would be sorry. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, the internet, it's full of savages, and you just got to mute them out, continue on the story that you're telling. You know, it's helping a lot of people, I'm sure, and it resonates with me as well. So, you know, I think it's more beneficial than it is dealing with the negative comments and stuff. You just got to be able to tune that out one way or another. But you're doing great work, man.
Piggybacking on that, like, I would just say that the media in general, like, we live in this society where media is so filled of negativity. Twitter, you get all that toxicity, right? So like, those negative, ignorant people are typically the loudest, and the ones that you're helping, I'm sure, are like silent. And like, maybe when there is a drastic change, they'll reach out and be like, thank you, that helped. I don't know. Again, you know, I would also say I appreciate that side and would encourage you to do more, because that's the kind of stuff we need more of in our life.
Yeah, I agree. And so thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, it's definitely something that, Yeah, like I said, I've strayed from because I don't want to say the internet mob won, but at a certain point, it's just like I don't want to deal with this anymore, and you get a lot of that. And I don't know, are you guys
Totally
familiar with
understandable.
Katie Nolan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, she had to like completely just unplug from the media in general, and she just recently had a really really good interview that she did with Dan Lebitard. I don't know if you checked that out or not, and it's great. But she talks about how those internet trolls and she used to clap back and she'd put them on blast and kind of have fun with it, and that was kind of her coping mechanism as a way of acting like it didn't bother her, even though it really did affect her to the point that she had to completely walk away from what was her dream opportunity. It's a it's tough. I think it's a lot tougher dealing with that. If I scroll through my replies, 1 in every 10 is something negative. It's just kind of the way it goes. And I try not to let it bother me, but I'd be lying if I said that it didn't get under my skin from time to time.
Well, thanks for taking us to that depth there, Shane O'Mac. That's probably the deepest we've gotten on this podcast. Now I know why you went and got,
we like keeping it lighthearted and fun here.
Yeah, now I know, Shane O'Mac, why you went and got a clear head before the show. Because well, I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Nothing's off limits here. You guys can
I appreciate you sharing that with us. I didn't think we were going to be getting going touching there, but thanks for the vulnerability. We're 3 guys that will talk about anything. So if you need 3 soldiers too to back you up in the replies, I'm really good at punching back at people.
Yeah, he's great at it.
I'll keep an eye out. And but anyways, Shane, Bears or what?
Yeah, let's go to the Bears.
All right, let's talk Bears. We'll get into the offseason. I want to talk about what is being talked about most right now in the fan base, and that is the 9 pick. So let's just start there and then, work into the rest, offseason moves, what to expect in the draft, and kind of cover everything. But I want to start with what's most being talked about now, and that's the 9 pick.
Yeah, I've got a pretty boring take maybe on this one. I think that, it's been discussed ad nauseum at this point, but there's very much so a big 3 wide receivers in this draft class. And I think if Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, or Rome Odunze are there at 9, it would be ridiculous not to take one of them. DJ Moore is still good. He's sitting at the top of the age curve right now. He's still got plenty of productive years ahead of him. I think Keenan Allen, kind of on the fence about that. I don't know how he's going to do this year. I think if we signed him 2 years ago, coming off the injury plague 700-yard season, there wouldn't be any expectations at all. But he's coming off a career year right now. At the same time, he's going into his age 32 season. So I'm not convinced that Keenan Allen is anything more than like a half-year Band-Aid at this point. If you can link up one of those big 3 young receivers to play opposite DJ Moore and be that number 2 guy, maybe even the number 1 guy for Caleb Williams, you've got to do it. I think if those 3 are off the board, though, I think the Bears should probably try to trade back. They might not be looking, if things go as planned, they might not be picking in the top 10 for a while after this. We got to hope that they finally switch that gear and become a winning team, which means they're picking in the 20s going forward. So I think that if they can trade back from 9 and get an additional first-round pick for next season, that's the best move if one of those receivers isn't available.
Yeah, I love that. So I completely agree with you. I know in January, my take, Truck's always trying to get me back in the Bears. I'll admit, I'm more of an LSU. I'm an LSU players fan, and I'm not really blindly loyal to too many sports organizations. Grew up a Bears fan, and have just been beaten up over time. And I'd rather be loyal to the bankroll than just a team that disappoints me every year. So, I said in January, if they hire Shane Waldron, check. If they draft Caleb Williams, check. And then if they draft Malik Neighbors, I will be a Chicago Bears fan again. And
that would be electric. Neighbors fall to 9.
Yeah, and we're at 2 out of 3. And honestly, I think I would be talked into any of those top 3 that you just mentioned. But let me break down what I think, if available, the Bears should do in that is, if we see 1 through 4 go quarterback and the Chargers are sitting there at 5, Why not go trade up and get Marvin Harrison Jr.? You bring in a generational talent at quarterback with a generational talent at wide receiver, and you have them grow together. You have Marvin Harrison learn from Keenan Allen how to be a professional, how to be that Hall of Fame type guy. You have DJ Moore, who you talked about. You said he's good. I think he's great. I think he's always been great. Yeah, he is an outstanding wide receiver, and he's going to be in his prime. You just picked up Swift, who is a dynamic back and has speed and has a ton of ways to beat you. You add Marvin Harrison, you're not only making an all-in move for right now, but for the long term by pairing those two potential Hall of Famers together. So I think and then I heard today that, if it took a future first, I would be okay with that because of the confidence I have in those two and their ability long term and now.
So do you think there's a huge gap between Neighbors and Harrison? I think it's a lot slimmer. No. I mean, if there's a chance that Neighbors can fall to 9, I don't know if it makes sense to trade up to 5.
Yeah, I just don't think there is a chance. I think you see Harrison go, and then it's like, all right, Giants go Neighbors, or 7 and 8, probably not. But that doesn't mean someone's not going to trade up a Bills who need a wide receiver 1. And they see Neighbors slip down to 7, and there's a team like the Titans there who, we need Joe Alt, but if we can trade back and get, some long-term assets, I just want one of those guys. Give me either. I agree with you. Neighbors is incredible, and if his name wasn't Marvin Harrison Jr., I think that 1-2 could be talked about a lot closer. And he didn't look like an avatar. But give me one of those guys and I'm extremely happy. I would say if you can trade up to 5, I heard that the second rounder this year could be a cost to trade back from 9 to 5. I would give up a second rounder in a heartbeat.
If that's all it costs is the second rounder to move up, I think it's worth it. But I think if we got to look at next year's first, that might be a little bit steep. But I think something else that people are talking about now or people aren't talking about now that I think is a very realistic possibility is that one of these quarterbacks is going to end up sliding. Like every single year, we say it's going to be quarterback at the top of the draft. And there's always red flags that teams are paying attention to. Now, whether that's JJ McCarthy's lack of production or whether that's, I know you're an LSU fan, so don't, skewer me for saying this, but Jaden Daniels takes a lot of sacks. And as
I'm not biased. Yeah. That's not, I would agree with you with Daniels. Like he takes so many, not sacks, he takes hits,
brutal hits. Yeah. And I think that there's a world where either Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy could slide down to 9. And if the Bears are on the clock at 9 and one of those two quarterbacks is still available, then that 9 pick becomes so much more valuable for a QB needy team to move up and take one of them. So right now we're saying, these 4 quarterbacks are going top 4, top 5, but I think there's a very realistic world where one of McCarthy or Daniels could end up sliding to 9.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with you there. So I also think with Daniels, I think he's a much better passer than Anthony Richardson. But he, like you said, he is skinny. He said he would have ran a 4.25. I'm not buying that. That's incredible. But saying he's not somewhere in the 4.3s, dude, he's fast. That's why he had, I don't know the number off the top of my head, 2,500 rushing yards last year, something ridiculous. He is good. Is he going to translate to the NFL game? I'd say I don't know. Is there a possibility one of those guys fall to that 9 spot? Most likely. But right now, we have 3 needy teams at quarterback, and then you have the Raiders, you have the Vikings, you have these teams that do need it. So is it a possibility we go 4 straight? Yeah, I mean, Truck, let's hear the ears. Dave and I we don't live in Chicago, so we don't hear the day-to-day. We want to hear what the blue collar guys on the TV set are on the TV set.
Meatball radio.
But yeah, let's hear Meatball radio. Yeah. What are we hearing, and what is your take?
Well, I'll start with what we're hearing. Okay, ears to the ground in Chicago. It's echoing the sentiment. We need a young wide receiver. We can't just go into a multiple-year career with Caleb Williams, with an aging Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. As good as those two are, I love that combo, but you need to bring in a young receiver to pair with a young quarterback and let them build together. That is first and foremost. So that is priority one in Chicago. In my opinion, it's if Neighbors, I don't seem to think that Neighbors is going to be there at 9. I think Neighbors is too good of a prospect. I think he's going to get taken. And if you're talking about what you just said with the quarterback falling, which I think is a very realistic possibility, it happens every single year. One of the quarterbacks slips. If that happens, to me, probably all 3 of the receivers are gone, in my opinion. So in that sentiment, you have to trade back and then get the best available later on in the draft. And what that looks like, it's completely speculative. So it's hard to formulate what that would look like. But yeah, I think the Bears need to leave this draft with one of those 3 wide receivers. And if you got to trade up to do it, trade up to get your guy, and we're set.
And that seems to be what we're hearing more and more smoke about, is that the Bears are willing to trade up to get one of those guys. We haven't talked about Odunze too much, but I talked about how I don't think there's a huge gap between Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison, and I think that Odunze is right up there with those guys as well. It's very rare to talk about like a 1A, 1B, 1C type of situation, but Odunze is a different type of player than those other 2. I mean, all 3 are very different players, but I think Odunze has just as high a ceiling as the others.
Yeah, well, and I was curious though. Let's just play this scenario out. If it's Odunze is there at 9. And you also have the pass rusher Turner there. He doesn't get taken by Atlanta. Does Eberflus, because he has been out there saying we need another guy on the defensive end. Do you think Eberflus pushes hard enough to take the defensive end over Odunze?
They've made strong investments in defense over the last couple of years, especially last year, completely revamping the linebacking core, making that trade for Montez Sweat. I think, and I could be totally wrong here, but I think that they would lean Odunze over Turner in that situation, especially after spending a second-round pick and almost $100 million on Montez Sweat last offseason.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's wide receiver, and as you mentioned earlier, like if you're a Bears front office, you're not confident we're going to be this high in the draft again, right? You're playing for the playoffs right now, winning the division. So, and think about like the premium right now that young wide receiver ones have in the NFL. We're seeing these contracts we've never seen before with wide receivers. The game is so pass heavy. You're bringing in a guy that you want to get 300 yards per game, and you're in a spot where 3 generational type wide receivers are being drafted. Now, Odunze, like he is third fiddle for me, but then I could talk myself into the way that you mentioned he has a different skill set. Some of that is like get the ball in his hands and let him run. And
it overlaps
Keenan
with DJ
Allen,
Moore a lot. His skill set really overlaps with DJ Moore quite a bit.
And learning from Keenan, man, like Keenan finds space better than anyone. So teaching a young receiver that is that good yard after catch from one of the best in the game right now at finding space and getting the ball, that's not necessarily a bad situation to have as your third option.
And that's why Keenan Allen, I have mixed feelings about trading a draft pick, or they're already pretty thin in draft picks. And like I said, I think that our perception, or maybe like what we're expecting from Keenan Allen, is probably too big. I think our expectations are too big right now for Keenan Allen, because he's coming off of a year where Mike Williams was hurt, Austin Eckler was hurt. That Kellen Moore offense is always kind of hyper focused on one wide receiver. It's very rare that you see a player at Keenan Allen's age have a career year. So we kind of had to pay a premium to do that. But I think that, one, the development that he's going to have on DJ Moore to even help him take even another step forward. 2, the development that he's going to have on whatever rookie wide receiver they draft. And 3, being that safety blanket that's just going to be open every single snap. I mean, he doesn't need to get downfield to get open. He's open immediately off the line. That's going to help Caleb Williams with his development as well. So I think that so much of what Keenan Allen is going to do for this team is going to be beyond the stat sheet. He might only go for 600, 700, 800 yards, but I think he's going to help everybody around him be a better player.
Yeah, my best case scenario for the role that he's going to play, when I didn't think Keenan Allen was an option, was Curtis Samuel. Like him being that wide receiver 3 that could put together some pretty impressive games. Like Keenan Allen I didn't think of him as an option. And what you're saying he can do in the locker room, and being a safety blanket for a guy like Caleb Williams, that's, you need to have confidence immediately as a young quarterback. Like if you lose your confidence gosh, it can be bad, right? We've seen
just
that
saw it
in
with Justin
Chicago with
Fields,
Justin
right?
Fields and
Yeah.
Mitch Trubisky. So,
AJ
that's
Cutler.
yeah. So I don't need to go any further about that to express the importance there. But yeah. And Shane, to your point, like Dallas Turner, he's going to be outstanding. That would not be a bad pick. And probably 3-4 years ago, when edge was the most important position in the NFL, that's probably a no-brainer pick, right? Like, it's just right now there's such a premium on franchise quarterback or very good rookie, getting a rookie where you can spend elsewhere on that rookie contract at quarterback, and then wide receivers, right? It's a passing game. And that's what we love here in fantasy football. So
Chuck, can I throw you another question, kind of what the word on the street is in Chicago right now? Is Brock Bowers, is that something like, are people in Chicago clamoring for Brock Bowers? Let's say there's a world where the four quarterbacks are all right. That's what I was hopeful. I mean, I like Brock Bowers.
It's not good, even, the thing with Brock Bowers, I think most Chicago people know of him as just this incredible gamer. The guy's always open. The guy's a great receiver, and that's awesome. But it's when you're looking at team needs, it's just not something that's at the forefront for the Bears right now.
I don't know. I think with that Gerald Everett, Waldron knows him well. Do you really need Bowers with Kmet and Everett? I think that kind of answered the question
what a cool
there.
Story, by the way, Gerald Everett just like following Shane Waldron around every step of his career, team to team to team. I love it. That loves it. Yes,
you need those guys.
Waldron loves Everett.
You need those guys. Those guys that can teach other people his offense and be a veteran presence. And he's a great pass catcher. He has that chemistry with Keenan Allen. There's so many dots there that are connected with having him on the team that I think it's only a value add.
I've been beating the drum for Everett for years and like have egg on my face every single year. Great football player, hasn't really done much in fantasy. Now that he's like the tight end 2, like the 6th option on the team, and I'm finally completely out on Everett. Now I expect him to go for like 800 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Best ball, dude. Best ball.
Yeah.
Tell me you're not going to draft him. You're not going to stack him with Caleb in best ball. You're lying to me.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's talk about fantasy a little bit. So, we don't know that wide receiver 3 that, the third option that they were talking about them getting at wide receiver. We don't know that's going to happen yet, but what is the fantasy outlook? Let's say it is going to happen, since we all think a high probability that it does. Doesn't matter who it is. What is the wide receiver core or receiving options, include Kmet, Everett, we talked about? What does that pecking order look like to you? And what can we expect? Are they going to live up to the value of where they're going to be drafted? Just give us your rundown there.
No, frankly, as much as I want to be excited, I think that everybody's being overdrafted right now. There's almost no world where these guys are all going to be able to live up to their current ADP. I was just looking at it yesterday morning and I forget. But if I remember correctly, they're both getting drafted inside DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, I should say, are both getting drafted inside the top 20 receivers. If you look historically, there have been very few rookie quarterbacks that can support a fantasy wide receiver 1. When you start looking at quarterbacks who have supported 2 wide receiver 1s, the list is almost completely non-existent. CJ Stroud came kind of close last year. Andrew Luck, his rookie season, almost did it, but it's never happened before. So, I mean, the way that we're drafting Keenan Allen and DJ Moore right now is, 1, expecting them both to be healthy for a full 17 games, and 2, expecting Caleb Williams to have the best rookie season in NFL history. Not saying it's not going to happen, but expectations are pretty high for these 2 right now. And then, like we said, we expect them to draft a rookie wide receiver 3, presumably. But I mean, a world exists where if they draft Malik Neighbors, could be the best wide receiver in this class. And if he takes that step forward and by the season's midway point ends up being the wide receiver 1 on the team, then Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, one of these guys is fallen by the wayside as well. So I think it's a great system for Caleb to develop in. It's going to be great for real football, but much like the Houston Texans, that's another one where Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, 3 very good wide receivers right now, where they're getting priced in fantasy. I don't really want any of them because it's almost impossible for all 3 of these guys to live up to their ADP.
Yeah, so I want Mechie for the Texans.
So it's almost like you want to take a plant flag on one of them if you have a strong inclination of, plant your flag on DJ Moore and don't be drafting, Keenan Allen and whatnot. So, yeah, I get
in a
that.
situation like this, typically what I'll do, I'll draft the cheapest of the guys. Rather than paying up for DJ Moore, I'll take Keenan Allen or whoever that rookie wide receiver is that they draft later. I'll take that guy cheaper, knowing that he's not going to cost me quite as much in my fantasy drafts. And if DJ Moore or one of the guys ahead of him gets injured, or if Caleb Williams throws for 5,000 yards this year, I at least got a cheaper part of the pie that can be just as lucrative.
Yeah.
Here's an example. Truck, real quick. Here's an example of like last year. I felt this way about the Chargers. I thought Herbert was going to have a big year, and I was like, I want a piece of this offense, but I don't think I think Allen's being drafted too high, and I think Mike Williams is being drafted too high. Like, where do I go? And I honestly think Gerald Everett was who I ended up falling on most of the time, but that's what it reminds me of. Not to that scale, because Bears are, I don't know ADPs. I haven't even started looking at it, but I'm sure DJ Moore's top 15.
DJ Moore's going off. I'm looking right now. Wide receiver 15 for DJ Moore. He's going at the end of round 2. And then Keenan Allen, getting drafted as wide receiver 27, is going at the start of round 4, which is kind of
Neighbors would be in the middle, you would assume, like 20.
Neighbors right now is getting drafted as wide receiver 18, going at the 2-3 turn, which is wild. So I mean, we're expecting Caleb Williams, if they do draft Neighbors. I mean, this is basically saying that he's going to be supporting 3 top 20 wide receivers. That's tough to get behind.
That kind of feeds into my next question. What is your realistic expectations for Caleb? I know everyone's saying he's the biggest prospect, and I know I was talking to Mike about this. Chicago is hungry for that 4,000-yard passer. We've never had
30 touchdowns.
And
you go for 4,030. Whoo!
Yeah, but is that a realistic, or is that something that you are realistically expecting from Caleb in year 1 with Shane Waldron and all these pieces we've added, the improved run game, our defense coming off a great end of the year last year? Like, what are your realistic expectations?
And we've seen it happen 5 times in NFL history. And if we're going to label Caleb Williams as being generational, he's got the extra game. He's going to have a great supporting cast. I think 4,000 yards is realistic. We've seen Jameis Winston do it, of all people. Cam Newton, C.J. Stroud, Justin Herbert, and Andrew Luck. I hate to say it because it could easily blow up in my face, but I think Caleb Williams can pass for 4,000 yards this year.
Yeah, I was going to say before you asked that question, Truck, was like, I don't know what Caleb's ADP is right now, but that's where the value in the Bears offense is, because I genuinely think that he will have a CJ Stroud type year. He has a better offense at every single position than CJ Stroud.
He's a much better rusher.
Much better rusher. He has a much better arm. And we've saw CJ do some amazing things last year, but like genuinely, Caleb's arm is better. He has the Mahomes ability where he can throw from so many different angles and gets creative and sees the field before it happens, kind of like what you saw a little bit with Stroud last year. So all you need to see for Caleb Williams to be confident in his ability to hit all of those numbers is the NFL speed. Is he able to stay composed and play the type of quarterback he's played at every other level? We're hoping the answer is yes. And if that's the case, 4,000 yards, Stroud had 23 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. I'm not ready to start putting numbers in there, but he's going to have a Stroud, in my mind, better year than Stroud.
Yeah, much better supporting cast. And to answer your question, Caleb Williams is getting drafted as QB12 right now. So I think that's willing to take the risk there. I actually love this little pocket of quarterbacks here. We've got a lot of the guys you'd expect. QB8 to QB11 is Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy. After those guys, then you see Caleb Williams, Justin
100%.
Herbert, Jared Goff, Trevor Lawrence, Jaden Daniels. I think I'd pass in that kind of back-end QB1 range with Dak and Love and Purdy, and wait a couple of rounds to get the guys I mentioned, Williams, Herbert, Lawrence, Daniels, etc.
Yeah, totally agree. And then, like, if we're talking best ball, I know you mentioned that earlier. I'm going to max out entries in best ball this year, and I will be drafting Caleb Williams, and there will be one of those receivers and probably a guy like Gerald Everett, right? Or maybe a DeAndre or Swift. I don't know that's what that stack's going to look like, but it's not going to be, you're going to have to plant your flag on one of them and then wait and try to stack something together, but it will all revolve around Caleb.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk Swift. I want to talk about the additions that we made. We talked about Keenan. We talked a little bit about Everett, but let's talk about Swift. That's the one guy of the offense we haven't hit on. Give us your take. What was your reaction to the signing? And then where do you think he fits in with the offense?
Well, my immediate reaction, because it was 13 minutes after legal tampering opened, and I think my immediate reaction, everybody's immediate reaction was like, yes, this is awesome. And then a couple hours later, everyone else started signing, and we're like, oh yeah, we got a little bit too excited about DeAndre Swift in Chicago. And don't get me wrong, he's dynamic, he's young, but I'm going to be the wet blanket here and say that I'm tempering expectations just a little bit for DeAndre Swift. This is a guy, we know he's got the talent, second round draft capital, but for whatever reason, he has turned like every single coaching staff against him, whether it was the first staff he played with in Detroit, the second staff he played with in Detroit, or last year in Philadelphia. He just does too much dancing. He's an east-west runner, and I'm not a big fan of those guys. So I understand the allure, and I understand the case for the upside here. He's a great pass catcher. He's great in open space. But as much as we've seen Shane Waldron in the past kind of lean on one guy, whether it was Cam Akers or whether it was Kenneth Walker last year, there's a talented core here. I don't think Khalil Herbert is just going to disappear. Roschon Johnson may not have had a huge role in his rookie season, but I think that he's a good player as well. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a committee approach here than people are willing to admit, just because Swift does a lot of things that quickly get you in the doghouse with coaches. He shies away from contact. He dances around behind the line too much. Like I said, I understand the case for the upside, but given where he's getting drafted right now and where the expectations are for Swift, it's going to be tough for me to buy in.
Truck, you had your Trey. He was on Truck's do not draft list last year, and we made him do a fantasy confessions and apologize and welcomed him to Chicago. So I'm a little afraid you're talking him back into that.
Listen, I am.
Truck, I think you were right last year, because if it wasn't for an injury to Kenneth Gainwell to start the season, DeAndre Swift wasn't even on the field. And then the Eagles, there were so many factors that led into DeAndre Swift getting the workload that he got. And then he disappeared down the stretch when it mattered most. Again, he fell into the doghouse under a new coaching staff. So, Truck, despite the finish DeAndre Swift had at the end of the season, I think you were right.
Yeah, well, here's where I kind of went wrong is I planted my flag in Rashad Penny. So that's kind of what I was more so apologizing for in my fantasy confession. I do love Rashad Penny. And early on, I thought there was a chance that he was going to take over the role. But if so facto, I was clowning on DeAndre Swift a lot last year. And
I was pounding the drum for Rashad Penny last offseason. There was that one clip in the preseason where it looked like he had a refrigerator tied to his back, and I was like, oh no.
That wasn't a great day.
I couldn't wait to tell you, Dave, how I thought this was going just outstanding, and I had so much fun. And then I realized after this segment how much the pumping of tires on Truck now of being like, told you I was right last season. Like this is going to cause such a headache to my life on the day-to-day that
who cares about the outcomes? The process was right, Truck.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate that. So I mean, the way I look at it right now is you're absolutely right. Bringing a talented running back like DeAndre Swift into the building, your immediate reaction is, all right, let's just give him the ball a ton. But it is going to be a committee approach. And that's just kind of what we're going to have to deal with. I think Roschon Johnson's going to take the necessary steps to be a nice auxiliary piece and actually do some damage when we need him to. And unfortunately, as much I'm not a big fan of Herbert either. I don't think he's the guy for us to be moving forward with. But as a secondary piece to Swift, I think the three of them could find a nice little pocket here and be good.
Yeah. Well, wait. Are we
different skill sets? I think that Khalil Herbert is going to be the early down guy. Like, that's what he does best. He's not great in the passing game, but if you can give him the ball on first and second down, you can give him the ball near the goal line. And that's my fear. Is like, we've never seen DeAndre Swift be a feature back. Even in college, he was kind of relegated to the pass catching role. Since he's been in the league, he's only eclipsed 200 carries in a season once. He's never throughout his college or NFL career been a feature back, I think it's just a little presumptive to assume that he's going to take over that role in Chicago.
Yeah, his sweet spot is that 15 touch maybe per game, right? And that honestly, that's probably Herbert too. After last season, like I just don't know that I'm confident that we're going to have all three of them on the team. Like I could see if Roschon takes a step forward and looks like he could be a not 3-down back, but kind of 3-down back. Is there a case that Khalil, see ya, don't need your services, and I don't know who that third back they'd bring in, maybe more of a bruiser, like a Deonta Foreman, honestly, is the type of running back they'd need there. So I don't know that I'm confident all three will still be there by the first game. I don't know what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, it's possible, but the thing is, like, there's no market for running backs right now. So, like, even if they decide, we're going to move on for Khalil Herbert, this is the last year of his rookie deal.
Yeah.
Like, is the team even giving up a 6th-round pick for Khalil Herbert? Like, if anything, they're probably just gonna have to cut him. And I don't know if it makes any sense to cut him. Yeah, I think his what he was a 6th-round pick, $1 million this year. That's all it's gonna keep to keep him on the roster. I mean, I guess maybe the roster space is more valuable, but I think when you've got a guy who's displayed productivity throughout his years, you got him on the contract under contract for $1 million this year, I think he probably sticks around. But it's really tough to get a read on this. I'm a big Roschon guy, and Truck, based on some of the things you said, I think that you are as well. I don't know how you guys feel about Roschon Johnson, but I think that he was just grossly, love it. Yeah, I think he was just grossly misused last year. They were trying to make him something that he isn't. He's good in the passing game, but he can do so much more than that. And I think he's one of those guys that the more carries he gets, the better he gets. He can get in a rhythm and get better as the game goes on. He shouldn't be a change of pace guy. He needs to be the guy that they can just feed 15, 18 times and see what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think my ideal outcome towards the middle of the season is Roschon being the early down guy and DeAndre Swift being the change of pace. And if that could happen, I mean, this season is just going to be amazing. I can't wait. But that would be ideal for me. But I know Herbert will be in the mix, and I know it might take a little bit longer for Roschon to find his wheels, so to speak, within the offense.
Yeah, so I live down in Austin, Texas. I would say I am a Longhorns fan as well. I know a lot of my LSU friends absolutely hate seeing me wear burnt orange, but I do like Roschon. Like he's just a good runner. He's been behind Bijan Robinson, who, I think the football world thinks last year was a little underwhelming, but he showed flashes of greatness, and he's going to be an insanely good running back in the NFL. So like, that's what he's been playing behind. Real
quickly, since you mentioned Texas, I've got this tattoo here, which is
100%
just because I'm a big metal fan, but I went to a game in November at UT, and everybody thought that I was just like the most diehard in the world. And everybody just sick as death. I had like a dozen people take a picture of that tattoo, and I didn't have the heart to tell them that I was just there for a bachelor party and we stumbled into a game. But I thought I was just a hardcore fan.
Yeah, you're a celebrity down here. I love it. I love it. So I don't know. What do you guys what else do we want to cover Bears wise? I think we've done a great job talking offense. We talked about the 9 pick. There's really not too much, as you mentioned earlier, the draft picks, like there's not too many still left available. So what other holes with the team do you need to see filled to feel confident going into training camp into
I think the 2 that they need to fill are quarterback and wide receiver, and they've got the ability to do that at the top of the draft. They've done a really good job building a pretty sound roster outside of that. Still got that 3rd-round pick as well, and a 4th. I mean, they don't have any late-round picks, but what was it, a 6th, I believe, that they or no, it was a 4th that they traded for Keenan Allen. So
4th.
Day 3, we're not going to have too much happening there, but I
mean, the depth at secondary that the Bears have is like shockingly good. And I think that's because they hit last year in the draft so well. Jackson's gone, but you have Truck. You're going to have to help me here. You have Brisker. You have Gordon.
Byard too.
Byard. Brisker, Byard. You got
Steven Johnson on the franchise tag.
Stevenson. Yeah.
Yeah,
stacked.
and Byard, I think, is brought in as that safety, but also the Keenan Allen of the defense, right? Like we got this young core and this young secondary. Like let's coach them up to be professionals and optimize their potential. So I think that's extremely exciting. The edge, as we've talked about, like you put someone beside Montez Sweat with potential, and you're going to see them shine because of how good he is. So
yeah,
I love hearing him say, I cannot lose a football game to the Packers next year.
Yep.
Did you guys see that?
yeah. That got my juices flowing.
After seeing Jordan Love and Justin Fields kind of like, kissing each other in the offseason, having Sweat come out and say that, as a Bears fan, it's gotta fire you up. Well, I'm good on the Bears. You got last questions there?
Yeah, I wanted to ask him a quick one for you, Dave. NFC North looks like it's going to be a gauntlet this year. What is your expectations for this division? Do you think the Lions continue that dominant success they had last year and be the kings of the North? Do you think the Packers, with their being young and taking the necessary steps with Josh Jacobs now on the team, or the Vikings as the dark horse? What's your gauge for this division and what to expect?
I think the Packers are the team to beat right now. And I know the Lions came off a good year, but I think that I don't want to say peaked. I think that that's a little harsh, but like last year was their opportunity and they lost. And you look at the Packers, nobody expected them to do what they did last year. The youngest team in the NFL, they didn't have a single pass catcher that had been in the league longer than 2 years. I mean, like this team just surprised just about everybody last year. Jordan Love, had his ups and downs and still was able to get them into the playoffs. And I think the Packers, as much as it pains me to say, are the team to beat in the NFC North right now. I like the Lions. They're a fun team. First of all, I don't know if you guys know, I talk about this on Twitter all the time. I'm not like a hater at all when it comes to sports. Like I appreciate greatness. As a kid, I loved Brett Favre. Once I got a little bit older, I loved Aaron Rodgers. And I know that's like blasphemous to say as a Bears fan, but like when you're watching the best guys at their craft, I can't help but enjoy it. And right now the Packers are a good team. The Lions are a good, fun team. I don't want to say I'm rooting for them. I root against them when they play against Chicago, but they're both good, young, and exciting teams. But the way I've got it shaken out right now, I think that the Vikings, regardless of who they bring in, unless they can somehow pull off a trade to land at 101 and bring in Caleb Williams, which isn't going to happen, I think they're kind of the bottom of the pecking order right now. So for me, I've got it Packers, Lions, and Bears all kind of clustered together at the top, and then a pretty big tier break with the Vikings below.
Yeah, I love that. That's music to my ears.
As you were pumping tires on truck earlier with the Swift thing, you just started reeling me back in and talking my language. I had Packers winning the division last year because I thought I saw that flash of what we were going to see in Love. I was extremely high on him. Anytime he came in at quarterback, he just looked composed and like a guy that could lead an offense. Now, did I think all of these rookies were going to fall into place? I mean, to a certain extent, because I did have them winning the division, but like I am a true believer in the Packers, and I think everything went well for them like it had to last year. So, I would agree. I think this year, however, I have Bears winning the division. I just need to see that wide receiver come in. I think Caleb is that guy. I've said it all along. I mean, this is months ago where I was talking about if the Bears could potentially bring this guy in, like he's going to be the next, big thing. So I have Bears 1, Packers, Lions 2 are interchangeable to me. I would say I agree with you that they're in a 3-pack up there, but I genuinely think the Bears are going to win the division. And if all goes well, it could be seeing them in the NFC, which Bears fans would lose their mind. Sorry, go ahead.
I think the Packers last year were a good lesson because I really liked them in the preseason as well. They were so cheap. And I think that the reason they were so cheap is because of the uncertainty. Everyone's like, I don't know how Jordan Love is going to be. And I don't know who the wide receiver 1 is going to be. So because of that, everybody fell in value. Jordan Love was sliding to like outside of the top 24 quarterbacks. Nobody knew who the wide receiver outside of Christian Watson going in round 3. Every other wide receiver was getting drafted in like round 16 or later. So I always try to look for those situations.
Yeah.
Because uncertainty scares people away. People don't want to draft something unless they have a very clear understanding of what it's going to be. So when you're looking at these messy backfields, like, we talked about the Bears earlier, like, is it going to be DeAndre Swift? Is it going to be Roshan Johnson? Is it going to be Khalil Herbert? I don't know for sure. And I'm not going to sit here and confidently say this is exactly what this backfield is going to look like, but I'm going to buy little pieces of all of them because they're also suppressed in value. I was actually shocked. I just looked. I thought DeAndre Swift, the way people were talking about him, I thought he'd be going in like the top 15. DeAndre Swift right now is getting drafted as RB25 with his big play upside and then as many passes as he catches. I'll draft some DeAndre Swift at that cost, and I'm going to draft Roshan Johnson at his RB45 cost as well. Similarly, you look at the Cleveland Browns. They're another team right now where everyone's like, I don't know how Deshaun Watson's going to be. I don't know if Jerry Jeudy's going to take that step forward. I don't know if David Njoku could build off of what he did last year. Because of that, they're all suppressed in value. So I'm just going to draft the Browns this year the same way I did the Packers last year.
Yeah, for best ball, three of our highest owned players was Jordan Love, Jaden Reed, and Nico Collins. Like, Texans were in that boat as well, where everyone's like, "Oh my God, this is gonna be horrible." Blah. At that, when you're throwing darts that late, take a guy with talent. There's always jumps every year where people are surprised, and instead of drafting DJ Chark, go and get a late Packers stack. So we have months to figure out where that's going to be this year, so we don't need to get too into it. I try to, at this point in the season, just enjoy the draft, and we'll get into that later on. But yeah, that's I love that insight from the NFC North, and I want to hear, Truck, you and Shane, real quick, what your guys' thoughts are.
Yeah, the Bears are going to win the division. It's I feel like that's not a secret right now with me and my stance with the Bears, but it's going to be tough. I think those three teams are going to be so close in record. 10-9. 10-8. 9. 10-8. You know what I'm saying? They're all kind of in that same range. 9 wins, 10 wins, 11 wins. I think they're going to be really good. I think it'll be tough battles with the NFC North. And I think the Bears will come out and win. I think they will.
Yeah, I think if they get Odunze or the Miracle Neighbors, I think we see 3 teams from that division in the playoffs. I think that is a viable option that happens because I think the Packers and Lions will still be that good. I think you could see that scenario happen. Like, you're only going to get one from the NFC South. You're only going to get the division winner. So I think there is that possibility of happening.
That is crazy after how bad the NFC North has been the last few years to even think that's a possibility. Like, you just broke my brain when you said that. And then I remember what the NFC South looks like, but gosh, I can't imagine.
We bored you with all this Bears talk, I'm sure. Could we just flip it real quickly? Ask you who's going to win the NFC East this year?
No, he has had his time to shine. We had Kevin Coleman on here. We had 3 straight fucking
we had a lot of Cowboys talk so far.
Go ahead, Shane. Take your
I think the Eagles window slammed shut, man. I hate to say it, but I think the Eagles got figured out. I think when Nick Bosa said we put the blueprint out there on how to stop them, I think he was right.
I mean, if you're a betting man, you will not bet on the Cowboys because I think it's been now 22 straight. I think it's been 22 straight years. It's been a different division winner in that division. So I think you got to look at somebody besides Dallas this year, whether if it is the Eagles with their addition, but history tells you it'll be a different division winner. And I cannot remember a worse offseason for the Dallas Cowboys than this year in a long time.
I hate to say it, but there's kind of an internal joke at our company about the Jerry Jones all-in comments. Jerry Jones, 2 months ago, we're all in, and hasn't done anything since. The biggest thing we've heard coming out of Dallas so far is hey, maybe we'll bring Zeke back.
Yeah,
it's that oil money delusion, man. Makes you say crazy things.
So Jerry, I have a little a library of Jerry quotes that I'll reference, and it's I added that all in, and there's the his one. He's like, I'm just about as low as a crippled cricket's ass, you know. And he's like, you know, I've been here when there's glory hole days, and I've been here when there wasn't, and I want those glory hole days back, you know. So there's just all these Jerryisms that I have that I like to spout out.
Did you see the picture recently of him sitting in the chair with his notepad?
With
And
the
it looks like he's
doodle?
taking notes, and he's just like scribbled all over a piece of paper.
Yes, the little doodle of nothing.
I gotta see that. That sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, just Google Jerry Jones notepad, and it's just it looks like he's intently taking notes, and then you look at his paper, and there's just nothing on it.
Yeah.
It is so good. Well, Dave, this was outstanding. Can't thank you enough for coming on. I know I said I committed to coming out to Denver and doing a mock draft with you while hiking with Larky. So
yeah,
that is something that I'm very serious about, and we will, as we talk, we'll come up with sometime during probably June. I don't know.
Did you sign up for Scott Fishbowl?
Yeah, so I put in an application. I don't know if I'm supposed to hear back about that or what. I've never been part of it.
I'm hosting we're doing it 4th of July weekend. So it's July 5th or 6th. I can't remember, whatever that Saturday is, but we're hosting the event. We're doing a live event draft in Denver. We've still got a few spots available, and Larky's going to be there. Scott Fish is going to be there. Joe Bryant's going to be there. It's going to be a big old party. So if you want to go to the Scott Fish website,
if you have that poll, I can commit to that right now. Guaranteed.
All right. Go on the Scott Fishbowl website, change your registration to say a live event in Denver, and then I'll get the email and I'll get it all set up for you.
Done. So yeah, I have one of my best friends. One of my best friends lives out there in Denver, and he had a kid, and I need to make a trip anyways. And this will be the perfect reason.
4th of July weekend. There you
that
go.
Sounds so fun though.
3 nights.
When you're saying, I don't remember what someone made a joke about hiking and doing a mock draft, and I was just like,
yes, I think it was Zach Miller with reception perception. Yeah, we're talking about doing the Manitou incline, which I don't know if you've ever seen that one before. It is it was an old railroad track, and they left the whatever you call them, I don't know what you call them.
Railroad brackets.
Yeah. And they basically use those as steps, and it is just 3,000 feet straight up a mountain. And that's what Zach wanted to do. I don't know if we'll do that one and actually do a draft or not, but that's a heck of a hike.
Well,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Shane.
Well, speaking just selfishly, but because we always ask our guests this, and Dave, I need this insight. So I'll be taking the family out to the Denver, Colorado Springs area this summer.
Awesome.
So I need to know 2 things. I need to know what is some must-stop places to eat there in the area, your go-to spots, and then maybe some hidden gem trails to go and check out.
So if I can be honest with you, and maybe this is just because I lived in the city of Chicago for 10 years, the food scene in Colorado is trash. It is so bad. Like, there just are not good restaurants out here.
Oh.
I'm telling you, oh my God. Like, that is the one thing. We've been out here for, my wife and I moved out here in 2018. And just like, yeah, there's some decent restaurants, but like, we were so spoiled living in Chicago for a decade where we had
Dave, you give me the word, I will send you some Vienna beef. Okay.
Oh, please.
It'll be on the way.
So I don't know if you know Novi's in Berwyn. That's like my favorite spot.
Yeah.
And they sell beef by the pound. And my mom will go there and she'll buy me a bunch of bags of beef and freeze them and send them out to me. And then I just keep them in the freezer so I can like reheat them whenever I want. The food out here is not good. But for trails, especially you said you're coming out with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how old the kids are, but there's Garden of the Gods just outside of Colorado Springs. And that's a really nice place to bring the kids, especially. It's not like crazy, like, you're out in the middle of nowhere, out in the wilderness. Some of the trails are paved, so it's really easy for kids to move around on. It's free and it's beautiful. It's right at the base of Pikes Peak. So you get the views of Pikes Peak looking up, and then they've got these humongous 1,000-foot tall red rocks sticking up out of the ground. That's in my opinion, like the most family friendly place you can go and kind of feel like you're out in the wilderness without actually having to really get too deep out there.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. When you mentioned, have you heard of insert food place around the Chicagoland area, Truck's got you covered. Like
I've been to it all. I mean, especially out in Berwyn too. I made a list recently. I'm hitting up the hidden gems in the city that I wasn't privy to, or like some really, really deep cuts.
All right.
So I'm getting through some of those, but I got some good ones so far. But
you ever get to Lito's Pizza in LaGrange?
Lito's, no, I'm not in LaGrange too much, but I can definitely make my way out there. Lito's Pizza.
Yeah, that was my grandpa. He passed away recently, but that was his spot. So I grew up on that pizza. I don't know if it's the best pizza in Chicago, but it's the thin Chicago.
The best pizza in Chicago is very subjective. A lot of people will say, Lou Malnati's and Giordano's. Yeah, Pequod's is the best in my opinion for deep dish, but.
So when I lived in the city, when I first moved to the city, I was 20. Oh, Nancy's is fire. I love Nancy's. Yeah. I used to have a buddy that worked there in high school, so we'd go in the back in the kitchen and we'd make our own pizzas. Yeah. But when I was in my early 20s, I lived in Chicago as a single guy, and I don't think they have it anymore. But Pequod's used to have a deal from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. where you would get a 9-inch pizza and a beer for $5. Yeah, I'm telling you, I lived on that for like 3 years. It was a 9-inch, one-topping pizza and a draft beer, and I was there like every single day at 11 a.m. when they opened up.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's great. You mentioned pizza in LaGrange. I have a good buddy who just opened an Italian restaurant in downtown LaGrange, GP Italiano. He would kill me if I didn't plug that, and we're talking pizza in LaGrange. So if you're ever in the area, we'll get something together there so you can try that out.
Good,
but yes,
Chicago food.
Yeah, so we need Truck to send you some beef. We'll send you some Rule 1 off air. We'll figure out if you drink protein or pre-workout, and we'll send you some Rule 1. We'll give you a nice little gift bag as a thank you. So appreciate it. I had an awesome time. I mean, you're one of these guys that we could talk to for 2 hours and just not have a single pause. So definitely lived up to the hype and our expectations, and thank you so much for coming on, sharing your stories, sharing your Bears background and expectations for this year with us.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, well, thanks everybody for tuning in and watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, go check out Dave Kluge and on Twitter, and on X. I keep saying Twitter. It's
Twitter.
I don't think I'm ever not going to say Twitter at this point. And go check them out at the Football Guys at the Fantasy Football Show over there. We appreciate you, the best roadies out there, and everybody buckle up.